Apparently, we're live. A very good evening to you all. Welcome to Irish Summertime. We sprung forward last weekend, well, yesterday morning. The result of which is that I'm starting the live stream at 8 p.m. Irish time, and as you can see, there is still daylight streaming into the Mythical Ireland library, to which you are all very welcome. This is Live Irish Myths episode number 175. I'm Anthony Murphy. You're very welcome tonight. We are talking about the Vikings again, and we've had a tremendous reaction to the Viking series so far. If you're dropping in, please do say hello. We are live streaming both on the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel and on the Mythical Ireland Facebook page. And from there, perhaps Auntie Joe or someone will share to the Mythical Ireland community and the Mythical Ireland Creatives group. Anyway, it's been a fabulous weekend and past week here in Ireland. We've had wall-to-wall sunshine and reasonably mild days with a little bit of a cool breeze. But I mean, it's spring. It's not summer just yet. But it is certainly showing signs of promise. Tonight, I'm reading from a book written by my good friend, Matthew Stout. And the book is Early Medieval Ireland, 431 to 1169. And that is, roughly speaking, from the period of the introduction of Christianity to the coming of the Anglo-Normans. A very good evening to Sandra Boothroyd, who is our first commenter tonight. Sandra's watching on Facebook. Also to Guido Bruce. Hello, Guido. You're very welcome. Michael Pike is also watching on Facebook. Michael Pike is a Mythical Ireland patron. If you want to become a patron, the address is there. Patreon.com/Mythical Ireland. Please do consider supporting the work of Mythical Ireland. Anna L. is in Balbriggan. Trenonoa and Falch. Paul Alburl is on the beautiful Alabama Gulf Coast. Wonderful to spend the time with you and the Tua. Well, it's a pleasure likewise. Reciprocated. Paul, welcome on. Kathy Maydale, yay, you got to be here today for half an hour. Hello, Mr. Anthony and Tua. Brilliant stuff, Kathy May. We gave you a shout last week, and I know that you were on a different break. We've sprung forward, so now the time difference between Ireland and New York is 5 hours again. It was only 4 hours there for a couple of weeks. And for those of you watching on the West Coast, I think it's 12 noon or just a minute past at this point in time. Daisy Peters is also here. Daisy is watching on YouTube. Hello, Daisy. A very good afternoon to you. Daisy's in Brazil. Beth Kelly is in Oklahoma. Hello, Beth, and all our Oklahomoan friends. I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly. I probably haven't. The full Irish Gary, good evening. Yes, a great catchphrase of yours, Gary. Another fine day on the sod, and I'm glad to concur with you that, in fact, that's correct. Barbara Barney. Hello, Barbara. Fáilte. John Main. Manachty, everyone from a cool but sunny Belmullet, County Mayo, where there is a fierce stretch in the evening. The sun has only just gone down here about 15 or 20 minutes ago, so woohoo! Yay to the long evenings. Isn't it fantastic? It's just brilliant. Michael Pike, I read that almost. Which part did you not read, Michael? And why? More importantly, I'm only joking. Alan Hoskins is saying hello from Ballina-Killaloe near Balebaroo. Very important to the story. Listening to you while walking a greyhound in the local park. Fantastic stuff. This is the sort of thing that people are going to be up to now, you know? Not stuck indoors in the dark because the winter is nearly over. Mariana is saying hello from a chilly Virginia. Well, I hope it's not too chilly, Mariana. We'll send a little bit of warmth your way. MCB, starting work soon, so I can't stay, but saw this was on. Wanted to drop in, say hello to Anthony and you all. I hope you all have a great night. Well, thank you. And I hope that you also have a great night at work, whatever it is you're doing. Is it Aleri Jones? Aleri? I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, and apologies if I haven't. Hello from North Wales. Well, you're only just across the water, and in fact, I think if I shouted out the window, you might hear me across the sea. You're very welcome to Live Irish Myths. Elaine Dent Lingenfelter boasts that it is very warm in Texas. That's 27 Celsius to the Irish. 81 Fahrenheit. Very nice. Send a bit of that our way, please. Tom Shanahan is saying good morning from Kerry. Tom, is that in New Zealand? But a very, very good morning to you, and thanks for joining us. Joe Butler, Auntie Joe is in the house. Good afternoon to our other Coloradoan friends. Thank you, Joe. You're very, very good for joining us and for everything that you do. Mandy McCurl is saying hello from a sunny Isle of Mull. Is that the one like in the famous song Mull of Kintyre and all of that? Is that the same thing? Is it? I presume it is, isn't it? Mandy, what a pleasure. And I hope you are also enjoying a lovely stretch in the evenings. Stephen O'Hara, I made sure to be on time tonight, so I don't have to sit up the front this week or sit in the corner, or write 100 lines. I must not be late for class. Adrian Beglin is in the house. Sláinte, Adrian, you're very welcome. Archaeoastronomy Database, Ty is in the house. Just listen while I finish editing a big video. Hope to release tomorrow. Brilliant stuff. We shall look forward to that. Snapper Earl says, slide over. I'm here. Yeah, you can sit up the front as well, please. Joke. In the old days, when I was at school, sitting up the front meant you were within slapping reach of the teacher. And I am not kidding. But we got rid of all that. Madison Morell is in New Brunswick in Canada. A very good afternoon, Madison. You're very welcome. Michael Pike says, correct, 12 noon. Brilliant stuff. Bernie Courtney is in Castlebar in the county of Mayo. Bernie Falcha Guji on Lowerlin. Katie Brogan is saying good afternoon and good evening to all. And don't forget, good morning to, sorry, I've forgotten the name. Tom. I think Tom is in New Zealand. Lexi Erickson is in the house. A nice sunny day in Denver. Excuse me, with snow due Wednesday. Sigh. Apparently, we're forecasting. Apologies, need to take some water. The forecast is that we're going to continue to have dry weather, but it's to get colder this week. What can you do? Just when you thought summer was coming. Adina Sparks, looking forward to more on the Vikings, as we are too. Very much so. Maureen Joyce is saying hello from Lexington in Kentucky. Maureen, a very good afternoon to you and all our friends in the States. Robert Friend says Fáilte to Fáilte Mochara. And Friend is such a wonderful name. Brendan Byrne, hope you enjoyed the sugarloaf. Yes, indeed. I was in your kind of area, Brendan. I was hoping that you would light a fire so I could light one on, what's that? Is it Camiaderi, is it? I don't know that mountain name. That should be visible on the Hill of Tara. Interesting. It was very hazy. We could barely see Dublin. It was a very hazy day, but beautiful, real beautiful day. So glad we did it. Wonderful trip up the Sugarloaf. And yeah, brilliant. Looking forward to more hikes during the summer. Kathleen Gallagher says it's a great, sunny, albeit chilly afternoon in New York. Well, I'm glad to hear the sun is shining around the world, Kathleen. And that's great news. Britt Griffin is in Cobalt, Northern Ontario. Yeah, it's a town that's so cold it's a shade of blue. That was a terrible joke. I'm not... Don't even start me, says you. Britt, you're very welcome. Lillian Cruz is in scorching Rio in Brazil, not too far away from Daisy Peters. Lillian, I'm delighted to hear that it's hot, but hopefully it's not too hot. Tom King, our resident magic maker at the Forge, and apparently most people probably didn't know Tom can play a banjo and sing a tune. And quite a good crooner he is too. Beautiful day in the Boyne Valley where I hope all is in good fettle. Super evening and working away. Enjoy the story. Brilliant stuff, Tom. Keep her lit. And looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Sue Prenter says, evening all. Haven't we had the most wonderful weather? Hope everyone... Yes, indeed, Sue. It has been fabulous. Tom Shanahan says, New Zealand. Yes, Anthony. Lovely morning here. Brilliant stuff. Guido, the stream isn't fluid. Okay. I'll shut down any other internet tabs that are open in the hope that that will help, which hopefully it will. Anne McCallum is in the house. Hope you're all well. Had a lovely spring day last Monday and then went right back to cold, cloudy, rainy, snowy, below freezing temperatures. Thankfully, a great Monday episode to tune into. hopefully it won't last too much longer, Anne, and hopefully spring and summer will shortly nudge winter out of the way for you. Sandra Boothroyd says, don't give up the day job. I think she's talking about me, certainly not talking about Tom King, because he is actually a great singer. Karen Murphy Beglin says, hello, everyone. Hello, Karen, you're very welcome. Love that middle name, by the way. What's to say except for Sea Warrior? Sea Warriors of the world, unite. And Mandy says, we're an island, not a peninsula. I'm sorry, we must make that distinguishing factor. We must refer to that in future. Joe Barrett is in Victoria, Australia, on the way to work. Wow. A very good morning, Joe. Safe journey to work. Hope you have a great day. Thank you for joining us from down under. Always wonderful to have our Australian and New Zealand friends joining the show. Irish Technical Thinker, delighted to join in live and not join in dead. Hope everyone is well. Yes, that's the way we like you, actually. We tend to find that our live viewers are a little bit more responsive in the comments section. Nora Gaffney O'Connor is in the house. A fierce fog about here, but it's very mystical. Great to see you in the county. Up to Sugarloaf. Great stuff. Yeah, I suppose if I had announced I was going, I probably would have had people coming to, which would have been great, by the way. It's a bit dodgy near the top. It's a bit of climbing required, I'm not as young and fit as I used to be, but I'm not as unfit as I thought I might be after, enduring a 2-year pandemic. Anne Scott Doherty is in Southern Oregon. Good afternoon, Anne. You are so welcome. Erica Humberducey is in Ipswich, Suffolk, where it's been sunny with a sharp breeze. Hopefully soon we will have unqualified sunshine. It won't be sunshine with haze, sunshine with fog, sunshine with cold, sunshine with frost, sunshine with wind. It'll be just sunshine with warm temperatures. Wouldn't that be nice? Valerie Gallagher's in the house. Hello, Valerie. And Valerie's back on home soil after a recent trip to Ireland, which I hope that she enjoyed immensely. I certainly enjoyed a few hours in her company in the Boyne Valley. Mull of Kintyre is different to the Isle of Mull. There you go. Thank you for helping me with that. And I apologize for botching the geography on that one. Wayne Bird is saying hello from Birmingham. Hello, Wayne. You're very welcome to Live Irish Myths. Luke Condren, studying for the Leaving Cert, but dropping in for a few. Well, come here, listen, don't let me get between you and your studies. And good luck with the Leaving Cert, by the way. I presume you're sitting that in June coming. Luke, the very best of luck with it. Hopefully, if you're at all interested in the Vikings, hopefully you'll learn a thing or two today. Lillian Cruz says 26 Celsius. My God, how dare you boast? Oh, it's okay, it's fine. I think we hit 15 Celsius tops this week, but that's okay. Hike the Spink in Glendalough. Yes, did that, Brendan, a few years ago. Would love to go back. Fabulous views. Amazing. Soliv is saying Banathy and a glorious sunset. Yes, indeed. What a fabulous evening. Lexi Erickson is saying hello again. Oh, I think I said hello already, but yes, I did. Oh, this is the same thing that happened last week. I started to see the comments over and over again, didn't I? Edina Sparks is looking forward to more on the Vikings. Brilliant stuff. Edina, if you ever visit Tom's Forge, your surname will be very apt because Sparks will be flying. And hopefully you'll get the chance to hammer at the anvil. Maureen Joyce is in Lexington, Kentucky. Yes, definitely said hello to Maureen. This is weird. But anyway, this is one of the glitches of the internet. Okay, Britt Griffin, Kathleen Gallagher. Okay, I'm going to keep going down. I'm sorry if I miss anyone. I'm seeing a lot of repeat comments. I do apologize if I happen to scroll through and miss. Tracy Mackey says, hello, I've not seen you and your videos for ages. Well, Tracy, the thing is, we do the live streams and they're all saved onto Facebook and YouTube. So they're all there for the watching afterwards. But don't ever feel that you're sitting at home and you're like, oh, I wouldn't mind watching an episode. There's 174 others gone before this one and lots of stuff to watch. Barbara Murphy's in a warm, cloudy Tucson, Arizona. You see what I mean about the warm and the sunny being qualified by something? It's like, why can't we just have sunshine and heat, But some people, luckily enough, are enduring just such temperature. Regina says the Midlands temperature was 18 Celsius today. Nice one. We have a slightly cool onshore breeze from the Irish Sea. Desiree Riley is in the house. Woohoo! She says it's a beautiful day here in Grand Junction. Well, come here, listen. You spread a little bit of that Grand Junction joy around the place, Desiree, and we'll be only too delighted to receive it. Helen Hurst Chatter is in South Dakota and is saying hello to everybody. You're very welcome, Helen. It's great to see you. Sophie O'Neill, where would you recommend Viking age enthusiasts check out on their travels in Ireland? Well, I mean, you can't go wrong, first and foremost, in visiting the National Museum. That will be jaw-dropping. I could tell you to visit Wood Quay in Dublin, but unfortunately the council built civic offices there in the late 70s or the early 80s and destroyed what was left of the Viking settlement in Dublin, which is terrible. You could go to Annagassan in County Louth, but you will not, when you are there, see really any remains of the Viking Long Fort, which was Lindochel. How could I forget that? Tom King might be able to tell us there's a Viking event on the same weekend as our planned Tua get together, the first in-person get together of the Mythflix Tua since the pandemic began. And that's on the 22nd of May. I think Tom may have information about a Viking event that's on that weekend. I'm not sure if that might help. Adina Sparks hopes to get back to Ireland. Sparks up the Forge would be fun. Well, come here, listen. You're absolutely guaranteed fun once Tom King is involved. I can tell you that. Yeah, I'm not sure if the issue has resolved. Apparently, there's an issue with a lagging video and quality issues. I apologize. I don't know what I can do about that. Stephen Mercer is saying hello from Liverpool. Hello, Stephen. And you're very welcome to Live Irishman. It's a very good evening to you. Good. I think I've caught up. So just a quick reminder that if you are looking for your own wearable triple spiral Triskel pendant, then look no further than the Mythical Ireland website, mythicalireland.com. And in the drop-down, gallery and shop on Gova Creations, where you will find a increasing variety of items made by our own wonderful smith. That is Tom King on Goba himself. So just in case you thought, Paul says video has greatly improved. Brilliant. That's excellent news. So just in case you thought, why are we still on the Vikings? I'm going all the way back now tonight to where we really started in the first episode. You know, the first Viking raids of the 9th century had a dramatic effect on Ireland and a dramatic ensuing events until the Battle of Clontarf had a dramatic effect on Irish history. However, I thought it would be remiss of me not to, as I had promised to do anyway, to read from Matthew Stout's book, not least because I think it will fill in some of the gaps for us. The first book we read, of course, was Ireland from, what was it called? From AD 800 to AD 1600 by John Ryan S.J. It was published in the 1960s. Now, it's still a wonderful book, but of course, as we learn more, I mean, for instance, that was published before the aforementioned Wood Quay had been excavated in Dublin. So we know a lot more about the Vikings now than we did then. So it's helpful to bring the scholarship right up to the current era. I think this book was published in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And I have a signed copy because it was published 2017. I have a signed copy, no less. But what I want to do is I want to take you back first to shortly before the Vikings arrived. And Matthew Stout will paint for us a picture of, a very brief picture, but a picture nonetheless of what life was like in Ireland at that time before the first of the Viking attacks. And then we'll go back into the Viking attacks, where I think you'll find that Matt gives us remarkable detail. So we will be repeating some of what we've done in previous episodes, but I think you'll agree that it will be fascinating nonetheless. What page are you on? And Scott Doherty wants to know. I'm starting on page 124, below that panel about the Book of Kells. So, are we ready? Are we all comfortable? Mark Gordon is in the house. Mark is in Iowa. Good day to you, Mark. You're very welcome to the live Irish Myths. Tom King is telling us, yes, 21st and 22nd of May, Vikings are going to visit Slane Castle. This promises to be a super spectacle. So, Slane Castle. So, it could be that if you were planning to come to the Mythflix gathering on the Hill of Tara on Sunday, the 22nd of May, that's at 2 p.m., you could, if you wanted to, incorporate the Viking event at Slane. I'm not sure if that's a ticketed event, Tom. I presume it is. And maybe people will have to look that information up. And if there's information that people can share about it, a link where you can get information or tickets, then please do that. But we'll be gathering on the Hill of Tara, all going well, on the 22nd of May. That's Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. So there's quite a few people have said that they're coming to that. I expect that will be a nice gathering. We're going to have a picnic, hopefully in the banqueting hall, and chat, and maybe a few songs, maybe a little bit of poetry. If somebody wants to do, read or recite a poem, sing a song. And then for those who are interested, we will do a tour of the hill led by myself, talking about the principal monuments and, of course, the myths attached to the hill. So that's a free event. There's no charge for that. Just turn up on the Hill of Tara at 2 p.m. on Sunday, the 22nd of May. We'll be kind of promoting that, not promoting it, but we'll be mentioning that plenty between now and then. That's just under 2 months' time. Desiree is jealous. Will you live stream it for those that can't make it? Well, I would, except for I think what we'll do is we'll do some live streaming from it, but not the whole thing, obviously, because that would require somebody to be in control of technology, and it'll probably last several hours, I'd imagine. But yeah, we'll try to share some of it, absolutely. Will you say a few words about the DNA lecture? Will it be available online afterwards? Yeah, I shared the link to that. Dr. Daniel, what's his name? Dan? Oh God, my head is. I should know this straight away, and I don't. Dan Bradley. I've shared the link to that on the Mythical Ireland page and the Mythical Ireland community. I don't know, but because you can attend either in person or watch it on a live stream, I'm only assuming that they will record it and maybe upload it to YouTube afterwards. But I don't know that detail. I'm not involved in organizing it. I'm just really looking forward to it, because that team was responsible for that wonderfully amazing information about Newgrange and the relationships between the people buried in the monuments. And their work has continued. So I suspect there will be more new information. And perhaps if there's somebody else who is able to share the link to that talk, that would be great. Anyway, I'll get on with things. I'm going to start reading from Matthew Stout's wonderful book about early medieval Ireland. And as I said, to paint a picture. And all you need to do to paint a picture is to look at a page of the Book of Kells and how marvelously executed and adorned it is. What time are we on? I can never see because the camera blocks it. Early medieval Irish society at the end of the 8th century was, like the Book of Kells, its own complete world. It had a profound sense of its own identity. It was the island of Patrick, quote, from the east to the west and from the north to the south, unquote. It had its own creation myths, and it had constructed and written down in the languages of the people and of the church the direct link between the Irish people and the Old Testament. Its people were said to have first arrived, quote, 40 days before the deluge, unquote. The Irish language itself was regarded as being comprised of, quote, what was the best of every language, unquote, created at the Tower of Babel. Yeah, the tradition is that the Irish language is made up of the 72 languages of Babel. The scattering of the languages or the confusion of the languages. It was one sophisticated legal system and one religion. Christianity came from abroad, but it flowered to such an extent on the island that an empire of learning and faith came to be created across Europe only a century after its introduction. Irish church leaders challenged the papacy on questions of doctrine and science. The artistic achievements in the 8th century, like the Christianity practiced, turn over the page, and I'm struggling to turn over the page, like the Christianity practiced by its creator, reflected the impact of thousands of years of influence from sources throughout the known world, but always expressed in a distinctively Irish hand. The political matrix was fragmented, but each dynasty was provided with a lineage reaching deep into prehistory. Warfare was endemic, and kingship was ceaselessly in turmoil, but never to the extent that the economy was undermined. Famine and disease were rife, but the patronage of poets and of the church was uninterrupted. It was an entire civilization with monastic towns and communities of farmers. It was a golden age of spectacular artistic achievement. Religious and secular entities vied for power within and against each other. But to the Irish and to the outside world, it appeared as a vibrant whole. WHOLE, by the way, because in Ireland we have a habit of describing a place that's not very attractive as, oh, that's an awful hole, HOLE. This is not to say that it was an advanced society in terms of kingship, especially when viewed from the lofty perspective of Charlemagne's court. Charlemagne, on assuming power in 771, ruled the entire Frankish realm, which stretched from the North Sea to the Alps and from the Pyrenees to the mouth of the Elbe. To put this in perspective, in the same year, the annals of Ulster record the killing of a king of Austria, a territory roughly equated with modern-day County Kilkenny, and a king of Connacht. Battles took place between the Lion Kings of the Iduinlinga and the Ifalya kingdoms, roughly comprising County Offaly and North County Kildare. And between the rivals of the Ikinsula, and between rivals of the Ikinsula, which is North County Wexford. The Clan Coleman ruler of Meath invaded Lyon as far as Dún Álinne in County Kildare. The southern Brea, around Lagore in County Meath, were overthrown, as were the Taig of West Wicklow. In that single year, 9 kings were in competition for parts of an area 30,000 square kilometers in size. Charlemagne started with a kingdom 27 times larger and ruled an ever-expanding empire for 43 years. The Annals of Ireland record the activities of rival dynasties for each of those 43 years. A year after taking power, Charlemagne began 3 decades, that's 772 to 804, of military activity designed to bring the pagan Saxons to the northeast to Christianity and into his empire. One of the principal events of that struggle was the horrific massacre at Verden, Lower Saxony in Germany, in 782 AD, when 4,500 captives were forcibly baptized and then executed. After the massacre, Charlemagne copper-fastened his military gains by establishing an administration of countships, the common system of rule, throughout the Frankish kingdom. During the conquest of Saxony, their king, Windukind, sought refuge with his brother-in-law Siegfried, a Danish king. Thus, the pagans of the far north of Europe were made keenly aware of the aggressive challenge posted by the Carolingian Empire. Or is it Carolingian? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. The word pagan suggests a vacuum of religious beliefs. And outside of the Judeo-Christian world, it is hard to understand a passionately held belief system that lacked codified holy books regulating human behavior. Nonetheless, the pagans of the North were united by spiritual beliefs that emphasized the interaction between humans and the natural world, overseen by a pantheon of military deities, including Thor and Odin, gods of battle frenzy and thunder, respectively. The Valkyries, more than 50 are known, were spirits that embodied the acts of warfare. Their names translate for example, sword noise, battle weaver, shield scraper, killer. In battle, the men of the North believed that they could be transformed into creatures of power when seized by a divinely inspired battle rage. Further, they were one of a few known world religions in which the complete destruction of the world was preordained, total annihilation with no eternal afterlife. The fatalistic mindset of these Scandinavians meant that all that really mattered to them was how one met one's fate. Donna Ferrer is in the house. Hello, Donna. You're very, very welcome. The Viking world was, quote, a society formed of ships, unquote, the unifying force in this variegated mountainous region. Toys, graffiti, houses, burial. Their entire life and afterlife was dominated by the ship. A variety of ocean-going vessels were invented, requiring significant innovation and technological advances. As early as the 4th century, Denmark's large armies were already transported by boat over long distances. The earliest known large man-powered or oared ship was found at Storhaug on the northwest coast of Norway near Stavanger. It was interred in a ship burial in 779. The earliest known classical sail-powered longboat was found at Osberg near modern Norway's border with Sweden. The Osberg ship was built in western Norway around 820. Sometime between these two dates, with the advent of sail-powered longships, these warlike pagans of the north became capable of swift, long-range ocean voyages. As soon as this capability was achieved, it was put to devastating use. In 793, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records the first Viking attack on the northern coast of Britain at the Monastery of Lindisfarne. AD 793. This year came dreadful forewarnings over the land of the Northumbrians, terrifying the people most woefully. These were immense sheets. These were, it says, was it supposed to be there? These were immense sheets of light rushing through the air, and whirlwinds and fiery dragons flying across the firmament. These tremendous tokens were soon followed by a great famine, and not long after, on the 6th day before the Ides of January in the same year, the harrowing inroads of heathen men made lamentable havoc in the Church of God in Holy Island, Lindisfarne, by rapine and slaughter. Quote, because they could, unquote, is a poor explanation for the reign of terror that all too soon came to Ireland. Like religion, naval technology was a precondition of the Viking Age, not its cause. But, remarkably, no satisfactory explanation has ever been put forward that accounts for the precise onset of the Viking attacks. A reaction to the Carolingian, I'm not sure, assault on pagan Saxony was a spur, as was their increasingly sophisticated economy brought about through contact with European and Arabic coinage. In 793, a violent seafaring society went to sea and brought with them horrific violence. The attack on Lindisfarne and other assaults were first reported in Ireland 2 years later, when the annals of Ulster refer to, quote, devastation of all the islands of Britain by heathens, unquote. The annals of Ulster, as is the way with the annals, states laconically, quote, the burning of Recru, that's Lambay Island, County Dublin, by the heathens, and Ski, Isle of Skye, Scotland, was overwhelmed and laid waste, unquote. The first Viking attack on Ireland took place in 795 at Lambay Island, one of the two Columban foundations in the Kingdom of Brea. The expedition from Norway involved a voyage of over 1,100 kilometres and featured a return journey via a raid on the island of Skye. It must be a coincidence that the two earliest recorded Viking attacks were against the Columban island monasteries of Lindisfarne and Lambay, as it seems unlikely, that they would have had foreknowledge of the affiliations of two offshore islands. What is beyond doubt, however, is the annalists' certainty that the attack on Lambay was not just another battle in the endless sequence of dynastic conflict. The perpetrators were described as gentiv, which is an Irish word, Gentiles, a term used in the Jewish or Old Testament sense of heathens. They were not just outsiders, but pagan outsiders intruding abruptly into a Christian world. Arrival at an Irish monastery must have astounded the Vikings. And this is what I'm talking about how Matt Stout fills in the detail for us, sort of detail that, not for want of scholarship, was perhaps absent from the Ryan book, which was also a wonderful introduction to the subject. Here were a large group of passive men, mostly, largely unarmed and in possession of great wealth. These Irish followers of Christ were helpless against the Vikings, who were, in the words of Patrick, describing similar circumstances, quote, like ravening wolves devouring God's own people like a loaf of bread, unquote. 3 years later, there was another Viking attack, this time on Patrick's Island off the coast at Skerries, County Dublin. We spoke about that in our episode about the mythology of St. Patrick. They, quote, broke the shrine of the Chuna, unquote, converting it to mere hack silver, pieces of precious metal used for trade. Further, they, quote, took the cattle tribute of the territories, unquote, presumably cattle collected in places in advance of paying tribute between Irish kingdoms, rather than the direct payment of tribute to the Vikings. The contemptuous breaking of the shrine speaks of the hostility that the Vikings felt for their Christian victims. This was not mere opportunistic theft. Excuse me. The Viking attacks had a devastating impact on the individual church that was prey to their attack and on the long-term psyche of the church in general. This is most clearly seen in the partial abandonment of Iona and the resettling of the monks in Meath, M-I-D-E, in Meath. Iona was first attacked in 802, and no sooner had that occurred than the island community sought a safer inland refuge. Kells, County Meath, quote, was given without battle, unquote, to Iona in 804. Any doubt about fleeing the exposed island was ended when Iona was attacked and 68 monks were killed in 806. In 807, the new monastery at Kells was consecrated on the site donated by Armagh. In a span of just 4 years, Ireland's most prestigious monastery had been twice attacked and then abandoned. The monks brought with them their most precious relics, explaining why we have the Book of Kells and not the Book of Iona. The impact of the Vikings started slowly, with the church initially bearing the brunt of the assault. Within a century, however, the Vikings would play a large role in creating a fundamentally different Ireland than the one that existed when they first arrived. And that finishes that chapter. I decided to start towards the end of that chapter because I thought it was a very good description of the situation in Ireland leading up to the arrival and the first assaults of the Vikings. Kerem Gogus is in the house. Hello, Kerem, my dear friend. How are you keeping? Bethany Cutler is sorry for being late. Well, you can sit up the front. Joke. You're very welcome, Bethany. Thanks for joining us. Lexi says, this is fascinating. I'm glad you think so. I absolutely, yes. And I've read this several times before. Fergal Canton says, battle rage reminds me of Cuchulain's warp frenzy. I did think that, actually. Fergal, interesting comparison. Seeing if I missed anyone else saying hello. Don't think I did. Old Irish Dreams, Dan is asking about. Am I aware of any good compilations of Irish Dreams? Not really. Not outside of those dreams that are mentioned in sporadically in the myths. You know. Bethany, good. Perfect. Sit up the front so you can pay extra attention. As I said earlier on, back when I was a school kid, if you were sitting up the front, that just meant you were within reach of a slap. Speaking of which, if you walk into a room with 100 people in it, 99 of them won't slap you in the face, but one will. That's a timely joke given all the shenanigans of our Hollywood friends at the Oscars. So this is the next chapter, which is chapter 7. It is entitled Kings and Vikings, 808 to 870. And yeah, I'm glad to hear that people are enjoying this, and hopefully you will continue to enjoy it, as I am doing. Brendan feels the Vikings might get more bad press than they deserve. What do you think? It's perfectly okay for them to arrive onto an island of peaceful monks and slaughter 68 of them. Perhaps, yeah, I don't know, Brendan. Maybe, there. I think that there's, I think that maybe there's a lack of awareness of just what a huge impact they had on Irish society, actually. And how much things changed during that era. Dan B says, to be fair, they could have killed 69. Well, I suppose, but maybe the 68 was all that was on the island. Vicious. Oh, yes. Oh, Anthony, I don't believe it. Yeah, sorry for the slap joke. I know, it's not even funny, It's not even remotely funny. Vicious Viking attacks continued throughout the first half of the 9th century and initiated a dedicated slave trade in Ireland. Other aspects of early medieval society also began to change. Most decisive was a shift towards arable farming and a more diverse livestock economy. The Cinel Nogon extended the power of kingship in general by imposing their choice of rulers over the subservient province of Lyon. In Muvu, the early 9th century was dominated by the violent career of Phelimid Macruvthon. Although a member of the ascetic Caeli Day, they were the Culdees, as they're called. They were the people of God who were a little bit pissed off about how the church and the kingship had become so embroiled, and the inevitable corruption that arose from that situation. I mentioned those in a chapter in my Mythical Ireland book, which was also the basis for a long blog post about the church and politics and how the two mingled in early medieval Ireland. Although a member of the ascetic Caeli Day, he burnt churches and raided throughout Ireland. Phelimid's Church of Derrynaflan possessed the richest set of altarware ever recovered from an Irish ecclesiastical site. In 837, the Vikings began to stay in Ireland permanently. They founded 2 fortified ship harbours in 841, strategically placed to spearhead. Excuse me. I'll say that again. Strategically placed to spearhead an unsuccessful attempt to conquer Meath. I presume, I hope it's mentioned, but I presume one of those is Linduchel. It's on the map. That is the aforementioned Annagassan. The Irish reaction to the permanent Viking presence was a shift in behaviour. For example, internecine warfare was replaced by assassination. The first effective High King in post-Viking Ireland was Mael Shachnal Mac Mael Runed, or Mael Mac. Try again, actually. Mael Shachnal Mac Mael Rooney. He defeated the Vikings and may have been responsible for the erection of the first high crosses of Ireland. Stone carving became the central focus of Irish ecclesiastical artists from this point. Big stone crosses that the Vikings couldn't carry away with them. Eugenia, Ireland's greatest philosopher, was active in the Carolingian Empire. I don't know whether it's Indian or Indian at mid-century, so I'm just going to vary between the two for the rest of the episode. He embodied the zenith of Irish intellectual activity in Europe. And of course, this feeds into that book title that we did in an episode of Book Talk that we spoke about, Thomas Cahill's How the Irish Saved Civilization. After the first attack on Lambay Island and the start again. I do apologise. We'll edit that bit out. No, we won't, because this is recorded live and goes out as is. I imagine it's a G with a J sound if it's French. Yeah, I'll go with that then. The latter sounds better, doesn't it? After the first attack on Lambay Island and the catastrophe experienced at Iona, the insulation of Irish society was shattered. Life is lived day by day, and the people of early medieval Ireland could not have the perspective of historical hindsight. It matters little that, cumulatively, only 14 attacks were recorded in the annals of Ulster during the first 2 decades of the Viking Age. This period saw attacks along the west coast, the invasion of Connacht as far south as Galway Bay, and in 824, the attack on Skellig. Eithgall of Skellig was carried off by the heathens, this is a quote, and died shortly afterwards of hunger and thirst. Of course, I think we had that, didn't we? In, if not last week's episode, the previous one. The Vikings had nothing to gain from the tortuous starving to death of an Irish cleric. It simply marks their contempt for their helpless Christian victims. At this point, no province in Ireland had been left untouched. In 811, the Uli were credited with the first recorded slaughter of the Vikings by the Irish, and this event was of such magnitude that it was recorded in the annals kept at Charlemagne's court. Slaughters were not new to the Irish, but the presence of the Vikings certainly contributed to raising the general level of violence. Another aspect of the Viking attacks emerges in 821, when Howth, County Dublin, quote, was plundered by the heathens, and they carried off a great number of women into captivity, unquote. This date marks the unambiguous beginning of the Viking slave trade in Ireland. The sense of precarious security did not prompt the immediate collapse of the economy or radical shifts in the ecclesiastical and political status quo. Further, many of these changes had pre-Viking origins. Nonetheless, it was a time of seismic shifts. The most critical was the surge in arable farming after 800. Cereal-type pollen rose dramatically, following a significant upturn during the previous century. This steep rise in arable farming is known throughout the island and is evident in North County Sligo, on Inisheer in the Aran Islands, and at Abbey in central Galway, and at Emla Bog in County Meath. The year 800 is also notable for the commencement of an upward spike in temperature that culminated circa 980 in the highest point of the quote, medieval warm period, unquote. Peat erosion began in the Wicklow Mountains circa 800, an indicator of this warm spell. Similarly, the construction of grain drying kilns, 288 dated examples are known, falls off sharply throughout Ireland from 700. This is further evidence of an improved climate that spurred on arable farming. Direct evidence for the upsurge in arable agriculture comes from construction dates for water mills. Although these were known from the early 7th century, two-thirds of 35 dated mills were built between 790 and 870. Their number includes a mill built in 789 to replace the earliest known tidal mill at the Monastery of Nendrum. And I actually don't know where that is. I'm sorry to say. Nendrum in County Down. It's in County Down. There you go. While milling, is everybody okay? Helen Hirsch makes a very interesting comment, and that is that there might not have been too many left to record these horrors, because remember that there were repeated attacks, which we probably will come to, and we certainly have covered already in previous episodes. While milling on an industrial scale began in the ecclesiastical sphere, mills were built in secular sites in increasing numbers. Raystown, near Ashbourne, County Meath, is notably different from both ecclesiastical sites and secular ring forts. This site was defined by a complex series of enclosures associated with 4 horizontal water mills, constructed between the mid-7th and late 9th centuries. At peak capacity, Raystown was processing significant quantities of barley, oats, and wheat for a local community, or as a centre of processing and redistribution for a local king or ecclesiastical authority. If Coda, just because I mentioned food, I mean, come on, you got fed already. It is only 6-kilometre distance from Lagore, the residence of the kings of southern Brea, and 8 kilometres from the early ecclesiastical site at Dunshaughlin. Directly related to the upsurge in arable agriculture is the decline in pastoral farming in the early medieval economy. Cattle bones from excavations even, show that the distribution of livestock from sites prior to 800 was remarkably consistent, with cattle dominant. After 800, excavations reveal a more diverse livestock economy, and in some instances, cattle lost their leading role. And of course, remember that from time immemorial, from the introduction of cattle in the Neolithic, cattle were currency and were a very important indicator of your wealth and your status. This change was not evenly spread throughout Ireland, however. Uli spearheaded this trend away from cattle, while sites in Brea were slower to respond. This is no small matter. Cattle were the heartbeat of the economy, the main currency, and the measure of wealth. If the early medieval Tua system, there we go, was a society of farmers, then agricultural transition reflects the beginnings of fundamental social transformations. The change predates the arrival of the Vikings, but their presence accelerated an evolution in Irish society. The complex matrix of minute political units did not suddenly disappear in the wake of these underlying economic events, but ambitious individuals invested their provincial kingships with more authority and meaning. At the start of the 9th century, Aed Ornada MacNeil was the Kinnail Nogon king of the Northern Ineal and High King of Ireland. He came to power in 797 at the Battle of Drumree, which is in County Meath, fought against the sons of the recently deceased Clan Coleman King of Meath. This was slightly unusual because Kinnail Nogon kings typically launched their careers with attacks on Lyon. Perhaps Lyon is where Aed was headed when he met the Clan Coleman army. Drumree in Brea is a long way, 80 kilometres, from Clan Coleman territory. Clan Coleman, should I say, territory in western Meath. Regardless, Aed set about, quote, the devastation of Meath, unquote, after the battle. 7 years later, Aed became the second recorded king to be ordained, and the Ornada added to his name at this point marks this event. Fascinating stuff. The ordination took place at Duancourt, an ominous location for Lyon interests, just 5 kilometres north of its boundary with Meath. Aed then invaded Lyon and won the submission of the king there. So far, this was business as usual, but Aed's reign is really marked by what he did in the following year. In 805, he returned to Dooncourt and, in an unprecedented act, divided the province of Lyon between two North Lyon kings. 13 years later, he still held sufficient authority to appoint two new kings over Lyon. This display of sustained inter-provincial authority, as opposed to inconclusive battles and devastations, marked a critical step in the modernization of Irish kingship. The religious sanction of Aed's kingship represented an evolution beyond mere enamelling. At his ordination, quote, the clerics of Ireland were freed from the obligation of attendance on expeditions and hostings, unquote, and Aed promulgated the law of Patrick designed to address offences against the clergy, while at the same time enhancing the prestige of Armagh and its Northern Nail patrons. When it suited him, Aed could use religion as a pretext for battle, as he did in an invasion of Uli in 809, but ecclesiastical sites were by no means off limits. In 811, the Cayley Day community of Tallaght organised the boycott of the fair of Taltu, that's the Éanach of Teltown, in retaliation for an attack by Aed of Tallaght, probably during his campaigns in Lyon in 804-5. Quote, neither horse nor chariot, unquote, arrived, and Aed was forced to placate the offended monastery with many gifts. In 817, he again fell foul of the church, leading to his excommunication at Tara by the, quote, community, the Wincher of Columkill, probably Kells. 2 years later, he was killed in battle. Aed's reign corresponded to that of Arthri MacCahal, the Muvu king, who was the first to have been ordained, and Murgush, king of Connacht, who attempted unsuccessful forays into Muvu against the might of Aed Ornada MacNeil. I keep stumbling over that name. From the 9th century, the annals provide more detail about individuals who dominated dynastic politics, and it becomes possible to discern a clearer historical narrative. This should not obscure the reality that provincial kingship is merely the more visible surface of a chaotic sea of royal disputes at Tua level, and that these internecine struggles certainly swirled below the elite echelon. Arthri MacCahal abdicated the kingship of Muvu before his death and was briefly replaced by a king whom the annals ignored. Such an ignominy to be completely ignored by the historians, the annalists. Muvu kingship was at a low ebb when Phelimid MacCruvton took the kingship of Cashel in 820. And of course, we've met Phelimid in our previous episodes. The entry in the annals suggests a forceful intervention, and as Phelimid's career unfolded, that assumption becomes a certainty. Phelimid was an ecclesiastic, a scribe and anchorite at Derrynaflan, a monastery on an island in Littleton Bog, 16 kilometres northeast of Cashel. He belonged to the Oanacht Cashel, a dynasty that had traditionally supplied kings of Muvu, but which had not done for over a century. His connection to the Muvu kingship was therefore so remote that it must have been his reputation as a cleric that brought him to this prominent position. Phelimid was of the Cayley Day and is listed among the 12 most prominent followers of Mael Ruam, the founder of Tallaght. Phelimid came to power just as the Viking raids escalated in number and severity, and although he never directly confronted the heathens, his career was motivated by their presence in Ireland. His actions were aimed at correcting the laxity of the church, for which he regarded the Viking invasion as a collective punishment. This rationale accounts for his repeated military campaigns against the Irish church itself. Phelimid's reign began, typically enough, with the promulgation of the law of Patrick, but at a Rig Dáil in Birr in 827, a Rig Dáil is Ri for king and Dáil, which is an assembly, like a political assembly. Dáil Éireann is the name of the modern Irish Parliament. But at a Dáil in Birr in 827, he was granted a say in the governance of Clonmacnoise in Meath, something so novel that an annalist noted, quote, the vice abbacy of Clonmacnoise was given to the men of Moovoo, which was not so previously, unquote. And you can, the annals are so laconic, they're so terse and lacking in detail that when you see those few words, which was not so previously, that is basically the analyst going, tut tut, how bloody dare they? You know, that is a statement that's loaded with intent and anger, you know. Remarkable stuff. Terry Lynn Zacharias is in the house from Colorado. You're very welcome, Terry Lynn. It's good to see you. I'm just checking. Fergal wants to know if the Vikings are disturbing my dog. Doesn't take much to disturb my dog, but in this house, you know, you don't have to be disturbed, but it definitely helps. Yes, indeed. Maybe they are. I'm not sure. He tends to bark like when there's the slightest movement around the house. I mean, if somebody comes to the front door, if he hears a dog barking 300 meters away out the back, you know yourself. Where was I? Yes, which was not so previously. His ambitions were manifest in early incursions into Connacht, and he burnt the monastery in Four. We all know the seven wonders of Four in modern County Westmeath, as part of his campaign against Meath in 830. Attacks on churches were the hallmark of Phelimid's inter-provincial policy. He burned his first church, Gallen, in 823. These actions violated the sanctuary of the monastic lands, which extended well beyond the church itself. Durrow and Clonmacnoise followed in 833. Members of the community of Clonmacnoise were put to death and their church lands burned to the very door of their church by Phelimid, king of Cashel. The community of Durrow were treated likewise to the very door of their church. Imagine that Phelimid is a religious zealot who believes that church and politics have become too intertwined. And what's the answer to that? Yeah, let's go and burn some churches and show them what good Christians we are. Later, don't even start me on the fact that that's the entire history of the Inquisitions and all of the conquests. And don't even start me. There's a whole book this thick to be read and written about that. Desiree says, I think he is creating all the dogs listen in because my dogs always bark a hello back and start looking everywhere for him. I remember you said that before. When Coda barks here, your dogs bark there. It's very funny. They're like, where's the dog? Where's the dog? Oh, oh, oh. Ah, yes. Brilliant stuff. Later, he took the Abbacy of Cork, 836, seized Kildare by force of arms, 837, and gained control over Clonfert, 838. Throughout his reign, he also tried to influence events in Armagh. His assault on Kildare coincided with a visit from the abbot of Armagh and members of that community. Phelimid made prisoners of them all. What a wonderfully nice chap he was for a Christian. Yes, indeed. Interesting. The Onacht Cashel. From 820 until a devastating defeat in 841, Phelimid mac Cruithton waged widespread interprovincial warfare and became the most powerful king in Ireland, according to one source at least. In 826 and 833, he invaded Delvna Bethra in Meath, that's Garry Castle Barony in modern-day County Offaly. He was in Brea in 831 with assistance from the men of Lyon, and again in 840. In 841, he was on the Barrow fighting the armies of Lyon and the Northern Inale. Connacht also suffered attacks from Moovoo in 830 and 837, although the Connacht confrontation resulted in defeat for Phelimid. In the following year, the annals record a Dáil between Phelimid and Niall Collier MacAda, that's 846, at Cloncurry in County Kildare. While the event is recorded in most Irish annals, the Moovoo Annals of Inishfallen record that the Cenail Nogon king of the Northern Inale, quote, submitted to Phelimid, son of Cruithton, so that Phelimid became full king of Ireland that day, unquote. The decisions taken at the Dáil of 838, which resulted in the unusual agreement To elevate Phalemid in the royal hierarchy may have been a response to the unprecedented threat of Viking invasion. It is impossible to conceive that this meeting did not discuss these dangerous new developments, which fundamentally threatened the status quo. The annals of Clonmacnoise corroborate the annals of Inishfallen to the extent that they refer also in 838 to a circuit, quote, all over Ireland that was like to depose the king and take the kingdom to himself, unquote. His authority over Connacht is suggested in a poem in the Annals of Ulster. Is a Phalemid in Ri, Dainad of our Einlahi, Etria Connacht Cain Ka, Agus Mi the Monra, which translates as Phalemid is the king, for whom a single day's work it is, to take the hostages of Connacht without battle and to spoil Meath. When he died in 847, he was eulogized as, quote, the best of the Irish, unquote. Yes, best of the Irish murdering bees. Insert your own curse word there. The end of the remarkable career of this cleric king coincided with the drowning of the king of the northern Inale, and so power reverted to the Clan Holman kings of Meath. Nonetheless, Phalemid Macrivton's success showed that a Muvu king could rise to prominence in Ireland. See what Matthew Stout is doing here? He's foreshadowing or preempting he's reflecting on the foreshadowing of the rise of Brian Boru from the relatively obscure Dál Chosh to the high kingship. I think that's what he's doing. Anyway, Phalemid's success showed that a Muvu king could rise to prominence in Ireland. Oh yeah, foreshadow, that's what it says in the next sentence. Anthony, why don't you just read and stop stopping and telling them? Yes, so much of this is, exposition on behalf of the reader. Why don't I just read what's there? Because I've just said exactly what's there. Phalemid Macrivton's success showed that a Muvu king could rise to prominence in Ireland, foreshadowing the career of Brian Borova a century hence, or Brian Boru as we prefer to call him. The importance of Muvu in the period is expressed in another form. Early in the 9th century, the monastery of Derry na Flan in County Tipperary, Phalemid Macrivton's own church, assembled the most sumptuous set of altarware ever discovered. We must contemplate just how wealthy were the major churches in Ireland, Armagh, Kildare, Clonmacnoise, when this obscure monastery could display such a spectacular suite of valuables on its relatively humble altar. Jane Wynne is very late. Late is the hour at which you choose to arrive. That's perfectly okay, Jane. Make yourself comfortable, pour yourself a cup of tea, and, sit in and just relax and chill and listen to the story, and don't be late again. I'm only joking. Yes, I love picking on the latecomers, like the teachers of old. I'm only joking. Where was I? When assessing the career of Phalemid, his relevance wanes as it becomes increasingly obvious that the Vikings were responsible for the most significant events in the period 820 to 847. At the beginning of his career, his activities accounted for 12% of the violence recorded in the annals of Ulster. That figure barely dropped to 9% in the second part of his career, 832 to 847. On the other hand, Viking violence represented 35% of that reported at the beginning of Phalemid's career, but rose to 62% of all violent activity after 832. Many battles with the Vikings resulted in Irish victories. 9 of 15 encounters were described as victories against the heathens or foreigners during the 820 to 847 period. Nonetheless, the Viking presence represented a marked quantitative escalation of violence in Ireland. This takes no account of the qualitative differences represented by attacks carried out by people with contempt for the Moors of early medieval society. Chungus Khan claims that he's been here for a while, eavesdropping from the shadows. I'm suspicious. I suspect you just crawled in a couple of moments ago. Well, could you please summarize the episode for us so far in 2 paragraphs and paste it as a comment for us? Thank you. Completely joking. Yes. I think, yes, once upon a time, teachers got a strange joy out of making their pupils feel miserable about being inattentive and late and such things. The most critical dates in the early history of the Vikings in Ireland come after 837. From this point, there was a concerted effort to conquer portions of the island, seeking to establish a permanent presence in Ireland, not merely to plunder it. In 837, the Annals of Ulster record a naval force of the Nordmanniv, which is Norsemen, 60 ships strong, was on the Boyne. That's the River Boyne. And another one of 60 ships on the River Liffey. These two forces plundered the plain of Liffey and the plain of Brea, including churches, forts, and dwellings. Echer Ciala agus Duna agus Treva. The men of Brea routed the foreigners, the Galiev, at Dionin in Mugdorna, which is unidentified, of Brea, and 120 of the Norsemen fell. Every minute late, you have to write a line in Irish, says Aaron O'Leary. By the way, I didn't see you coming in either. Are you late as well? I'm only joking. I'm getting great crack out of this. Wow. So that must have been some sight, because remember that the Boyne and the Liffey aren't... they're both tidal rivers. They're not navigable by large boats very far up. So that must have been a terrific sight to see 60 ships on the Boyne River and 60 on the Liffey. The largest Viking longships contained, of course, we did mention, didn't we, in the first episode of the series, that one of the successes of the Vikings was their ability to, when they met shallow water, to carry their boats onto the shore of the river, walk up above whatever rapids or cataracts or shallows there might be, and to get back into the water again. The largest Viking longships contained a crew of 70. Wow! Suggesting that this force could have comprised 8,400 men. The successful invasion of England was accomplished by William I in 1066 with just twice that number. Remarkably, the force on the Boyne was routed by the men of Brea, with the death of over 100 Norsemen. Yay, up the Breans, come on the Boyne! Saxolf, chief of the foreigners, was one of the casualties. The heart of Meath did not fare as well as the Boyne Valley. The southern Inale were, quote, slaughtered, unquote, from the Shannon to the sea, a neat depiction of the territory of Meath and an indication of the scale of damage inflicted by over 8,000 warriors. Wow. So now we're beginning to see some of the detail that we haven't seen in the previous episodes. Liam Smith is in the house. Write 100 lines. I must not be late for class. Thank you. Liam, you're very welcome. And Peter Woods is in the house. What is your excuse? You're only up the road, for God's sake. That's disgraceful. No, you're very welcome, Peter. I'm having great fun at the expense of the latecomers tonight because there's so many of them. But it's perfectly okay because I know everybody will religiously watch the whole episode again when it's finished and take notes and all that stuff. Chungus Khan, I'm very impressed. And you've even given us an Irish. Gansey. What is that about jumpers? Raymond de Lind says hi from the south. Another latecomer. There's going to be a whole two front rows full of latecomers. Come here, listen. For those of you intending to arrive at the Hill of Tara on the 22nd of May for our in-person gathering, be bloody there at 2 o'clock. But of course, it's Irish time, which means you can turn up at 1:15 if you want. Because nothing in Ireland starts on time. Mike Hill is also announcing his late arrival from Rialto. Well, sit at the front and pay extra attention. Raymondolin says, sorry, walking the dog. Whoops. Maybe that's why Coda was barking a little while ago. He's like, are you going to sit talking to your computer all night? Or are you going to bring me for a walk, for God's sake? He'd probably be right too, you know. I tried to get as close to Tunic as I could. Gansey is all I could muster up. That's perfectly okay. You're probably not 100. You're not a million miles off it. dil.ie, the Dictionary of the Irish Language, and chonglan.ie are the two places to go for looking for words. Where was I? I'm totally lost now because of all the bloody late. I mean, because of all the wonderful people who've decided to watch the episode. Ireland was different after the Viking invasion of 837. Although the annals of Ulster note that, quote, the principal kings escaped, unquote, royal behaviour was profoundly altered by the sheer shock of this onslaught. A key feature of kingship, and a means of establishing one's authority upon inauguration, was the promulgation of law. This activity comes to an abrupt halt in 837. Similarly, internecine warfare ends, suggesting that, in the face of the Vikings, dynasties, if you prefer, dynasties limited fights between themselves in order to better direct their efforts against foreign invasion. In 833, for example, the imperative to resist the Vikings encouraged and deposed the current kings of the Northern Aenale to form an effective coalition against the foreigners at Derry. From this point in Irish history, internal differences were settled mainly through assassination. I thought he was going to say, mediation and dialogue, and bipartisanship. No, through assassination. Previously, we went to war and hacked each other's heads off. Now we just kill each other. 12 are recorded, that's assassinations, are recorded in the 9th century, 12 in the 10th, and 38 in the 11th. It is possible, but unlikely, that the annalists themselves lost interest in recording domestic events in the aftermath of this threat from abroad. I suppose that would be a feature, wouldn't it? I mean, if you had seen your monasteries and your country overrun by marauding, murdering, terrifying invaders, perhaps you would become less interested in recording the ordinary, by-the-by, day-to-day banalities of life, banalities of, yes, this king went into this king's territory and slaughtered 20 of his men and took the kingship, but that kind of minor detail, But the end of the imposition of new laws and interdynastic rivalry are but two aspects of a suite of 9th century alterations, like assassinations and blindings, that indicate real societal change. That is literally where a king would put out another king's eyes, a rival king's eyes, literally just stab his eyes and pluck them out. Horrible, horrible thing to do to another human being. Another activity that terminates in 837 is the burning of churches. Churches continued to be attacked in great numbers by the Vikings, but this activity was separate in the minds of the annalists from the phenomenon of Irish attacks on specific churches as part of the process of imposing ecclesiastical and political authority. The cessation of internecine attacks occurred as Irish elites wrestled with the massive threat posed by foreign assaults. Desiree says, I'm kind of jealous. I want to stay late and sit in the front row. Can I pretend I'm just tuning? Yes, you can. Desiree Riley, up the front straight away. Pay full attention. And I want a 5,000 word summary of this episode when we're finished. Now, how does that suit? Yeah, Paul makes an interesting comment, and that is because we sprung forward last Sunday, some of the American viewers may have been expecting the episode to start an hour later. Yes, indeed. Yes. Ooh. And maybe they're just joining now. Well, if you're just joining now and that's the reason, you're very welcome. But sit up the front, pay attention. I'm having far too much fun with that. An additional factor concerning the reduced number of burning churches is that wooden churches were increasingly replaced by stone successors from the 9th century. Aha, very clever. They can't burn those down, can they? And this is, of course, before the era of bulldozers, which is how we pull down old ruins now. And I'm not joking. We do, in Ireland, unfortunately, have a sad history of destroying historical sites and monuments. The first unambiguous reference to a stone church is in the Annals of Ulster in 789. quote, a quarrel in Armagh in which a man was killed in front of the stone oratory, unquote. Traditionally, however, the first stone church, which I told you in a previous episode, is located just a few miles out the road here, is regarded as Duleek, County Meath, whose place name, Dowleach, literally means house of stones. Duleek is mentioned by Tirachon, so it was built prior to 693. And of course, Saint Keanon is the one who's associated with Duleek, and he was the first priest or bishop, can't remember which, priest certainly, ordained by St. Patrick according to tradition. Wasn't he the one who lit the fire, the Paschal fire? We had that in our Patrick's Day episode. It wasn't actually St. Patrick who brought the burning branch or whatever to torch to begin the fire. It was St. Keanon. The name was applied to the monastery because of its unique stone church. The 9th century Latin life of Mochua of Timahoe in County Laois commemorates this architectural achievement. How Saint Mochua obtained calm weather for a year and a half for Saint Keanon to build his church. This is a quote. In the meantime, the most holy man Keanon, with ardour of the spirit, undertook to build a stone church to the Lord, because before that time in Ireland, stone was not used for the building of churches. Also at that time, it happened that the work might be delayed or hampered to some extent, in that the masons and other workers said that if rain or heavy showers were to fall at any time between the two surrounding hills in that time, that they would have to stop work. Any excuse, lads, any excuse. On hearing this, St. Keanon, approaching each male and female saint in Ireland, asked that they would procure calm weather from God for the completion of their work. St. Mochua obtained from the celestial giver fair weather for a year and a half for the completion of that work, end quote. Wow. Yes, indeed. So, folks, you know what to do if you're looking for good weather for a spell. Gather up all the saints of Ireland and ask them to make an intercession on your behalf. The transition from wooden to stone churches was gradual, and wooden structures were never completely replaced. Timber churches still comprise 21% of all ecclesiastical buildings mentioned in the annals in the period 965 to 1169. The vast majority of surviving early medieval stone churches were built after 900. The invasion of the Boyne and Liffey valleys in 838 was followed 2 years later by the first permanent Viking settlement on Lough Neagh. Initially, the annalists record a raiding party, but these Vikings lingered on Lough Neagh in the following year, and in 841 the Annals of Ulster chillingly report, quote, the heathens were still on Lough Neagh, unquote. There you go, there's a chilling report if ever you had one. In 841, the annalist also records the establishment of 2 further settlements. There was a long fort, naval camp, at Lynn Dochel, which is Annagassan, County Louth, which we've mentioned on many occasions, from which the peoples and churches of Tethba were plundered. There was a long fort at Dublin, from which the Lion and the Inail were plundered, both states and churches, as far as Slieve Bloom. Less than 50 years after the Vikings first arrived on Irish shores, the establishment of a permanent presence marked a dramatic new phase in early medieval Irish history. This phase is coterminous with similar events in Europe. In 843, a base camp was set up at the mouth of the Loire, and large fleets of Viking ships loomed along the estuaries of the English coasts. In Britain, they stayed over the winter for the first time in 854. Interesting. The strategic positioning of the 841 Long Fort at the northern and southern edges of Meath suggests that the Vikings intended them as bridgeheads for the conquest of the province. In 866, similar strategies were employed by the Vikings to conquer the Anglo-Saxon kingdom of Northumbria. Mercia and East Anglia were also conquered by large Viking armies, who ultimately used pre-existing Anglo-Saxon administrative centres to impose their rule kingdom-wide. The stiff resistance to the Irish countered the invaders' efforts. The litany of inconsequential battles featured in the annals ensured that Irish armies were war-hardened when the time came to face this most serious challenge. Further, the complex Tuatha structure prevented the Vikings from achieving permanent territorial gains through the conquest of just a few major kingdoms, as had occurred in Britain. Longfort became centres of international trade, as well as bases from which Ireland could be raided but not conquered. And we are going to finish in about 5 minutes at about 9:30. Conscious of the fact that we've been going for a while, and some of you may be getting tired, especially the ones up the front writing out their summaries because they were late. A wizard is never late. I was going to say Harry Potter, Frodo Baggins. Archaeological, noisy early. Archaeological evidence reveals the precise nature of 3 of these early fortified ship camps. The first to be constructed was Lindochel. This settlement took advantage of a U-shaped bend of the river estuary that created a narrow spit of land on the County Louth coast. By the way, Lindochel is located northeast of me here by about 10, maybe 12 miles. 15, 16, 17 kilometers. I don't know what that is in kilometers. I still use miles. Years after we abandoned miles, I'm still talking miles. By the way, the oldest graveyard in Ireland ever was found last week. The man was 178 and his name was Miles from Dublin. I apologise. That was definitely the worst joke of the night. Excuse me. The modest 10-metre high ridge had previously been the location of a ring fort and ecclesiastical site on the boundary between Ard Cianachta, the northern limits of Brea in Meath, and Conala Murhevna, the southeasternmost Uli kingdom. Thank you, Liam, for that reaction. Yes. Yes, Raymondalind, there is the confusion. We sprang forward at the weekend, so we're back to the same. We had 2 weeks there where there was an hour less of a difference. So we start at 8 p.m. Irish, which is 3 p.m. Eastern and 12 noon Western, 12 noon Pacific, if that makes sense. Mavanway said, I needed a joke, though. Well, I hope that suitably... I hope that qualified as a joke. The modest 10-metre high ridge had previously been the location of a ring fort and ecclesiastical site. Yes, I said that. To create their fortification, the Vikings needed only to construct a 300-metre long rampart, which secured an area 1.2 kilometres long and 6.6 kilometres wide. A radiocarbon date from the base of the fill of the rampart's fosse confirms that it was constructed prior to 890. Excavation evidence showed that the settlement was a location for ship repairs, iron nails, and ship's rivets. Wow. A staging post for Viking raids, pieces of decorated metalwork, trade, hack silver, a lead weight, and a crossbeam in a scales balance, and domestic life, a weaving shuttle, and a spindle whorl. Wow, interesting stuff. The exact location of Dublin, as in Dublin, remains the subject of some uncertainty, but it actually has been dealt with very recently. Have I got that handy? One moment while I just check for the latest issue of Archaeology Ireland magazine, which I think I have. Yes, indeed. Hoping that this is the correct issue, or is it? I'll just check the contents. Is this the one? Is this the one? No. The one after it, Anthony. This one. And it's actually quite a comprehensive article. If I can't find it now, I'm going to be very embarrassed. Here we go. Where was Auchlia, the ford of the hurdles? Okay, that's slightly different. Yes. Auchlia, the ford of the hurdles, which is the old Irish name for Dublin, and Dublin are actually, technically speaking, two separate two separate locations. The Dublin is the Black Pool where the Puddle and the Liffey met. The ford of the hurdles is where the old ford was that crossed the river. Anyway, my apologies, I got mixed up there. Paul Campbell is mentioning the Joseph McGrail beta time change fact from the No Name Trivia Show Facebook Live hosted by you in Australia. 9 a.m. start last Monday, 10 a.m. start today, 11 a.m. start next Monday, while 8 p.m. start all the time in Canberra, Australia. Wow. I will be featured on that show very soon, by the way. Interesting that you should mention that. Henry Macaulay is catching up late because I came in late again. An unbelievable amount of latecomers tonight. What is it? Are you all scared of the Vikings? No, I promise. We'll do something different next week. Because it just seems that people are so terrified of the Vikings that they creep into the episode very late. We're about to finish anyway. The exact location of Dublin remains the subject of some uncertainty, but it was most likely located at Kilmainham, 1.8 kilometres upriver from the later 10th century Viking town. In their homeland, Vikings buried their dead adjacent to their settlements. This may have been the case in Dublin as well. The confluence of the Comock and Liffey rivers forms a V-shaped area that would have been easily defended once a fortification had been set up on the side unprotected by the two rivers. This location is suggested by the discovery of a Viking burial ground at Island Bridge, the largest burial complex of its type outside Norway. This cemetery, located just 600 metres to the east of the Long Fort, produced at least 17 pagan Viking burials, including 2 women. Another 17 Viking burials, also including 2 women, were found at the nearby ecclesiastical site of Kilmainham. 59 graves are known from the area as a whole. Although these burials were discovered before the advent of scientific archaeology, they comprise half of all recorded Viking graves in Ireland and produce 2/3 of all known Viking grave goods. Helen is reminding us that no, we're more afraid of venomous sheep. Brilliant. Pagan Vikings were buried with grave goods to accompany them to Valhall or Valhalla, where they awaited Ragnarok, the end of the world. Do you like the way I said that? The end of the world. It is possible, therefore, to discern from the grave goods the nature of the activity that took place at Dublin. The swords, shields, and plundered jewellery indicate the presence of warriors who would have launched raids from the Long Fort. The other finds, however, show that domestic activity in the settlement was well established in the 9th century. There was evidence for farming, shears and sickles, manufacturing, tongs and pincers, there's Tom King again, and trade, weighing scales and weights. The burial of women also showed that it was not merely a camp of raiders. Spindle whorls and needle cases indicate garment making, normally the province of women. In those days, it was anyway. It wasn't a sweeping remark about the modern day situation, just in case anybody just joined at that moment. The annals never recorded a third Long Fort discovered at Woodstown. It was 8 kilometres upstream from the Viking town of Waterford on the southern bank of the Suir. 2 adjacent D-shaped enclosures formed a defended area, 580 metres in total length and 170 metres wide, about half the size of Lindochel. The site was defended by a formidable ditch, 4 metres wide and 2.2 metres deep, and bank. A rectangular house found in the larger southernmost enclosure measured 10 metres by 7 metres, considerably larger than the typical Dublin house. A warrior burial was found 20 metres outside the northernmost enclosure, complete with sword, shield, spear, and axe. The radiocarbon and archaeological evidence, 6,000 objects, mainly of unequivocal late 9th century date, makes it clear that the Long Fort was occupied in the second half of the 9th century. Finds included Viking weaponry, domestic finds, hones, pins, a gaming piece, amber beads, knives, spindle horns, and evidence for industrial activity, ironworking, including the manufacture of iron nails and rivets, stone, bone, antler, and amber working. Wow. Tom King, have you ever worked with amber? Wow. 200 lead weights provide evidence for trade, as do 2 silver coins from the Islamic world. The site was abandoned sometime after 950, presumably because of the growth of Waterford. Fascinating stuff. Yes, we did mention Wood Quay earlier, Peter. There were, of course, mass protests against the Dublin Corporation's plan to build its offices on the site. The only thing that I suppose we can be glad of is that there was a full excavation. But sure, you know, the fact that they were just destroying it, I mean, they could have redesigned the buildings with a view to incorporating the remnants of the old Viking settlement into some sort of a, not a basement, but some sort of a ground level where they, you know, they could be sort of. I just think it was very, very silly. I think it was very. I think it was typical of the era, to be honest. You know, it just didn't care that much. You know, it's outrageous what has happened to some very important historical and archaeological sites. You know. But anyway, that is for the moment. I think that's all we're going to do on the Vikings because we don't want to be completely Norsed out. And yeah, it's. I think we should find. I should specifically find some a new theme or a new direction for next week's episode. In case, but I mean, all of this has been fascinating. Um, it's something that I've come to quite kind of late in my own study of, you know, mythology and the ancient world. In the early medieval period, that period that Matt Stout is talking about, from the arrival of Christianity until the arrival of the Anglo-Normans, is hugely important. And it's very important to have something of an understanding of the political and ecclesiastical shenanigans that went on in those centuries, especially that era of the Vikings, and how it affected later history. Norsed out, a new term. Maybe that one could be used on a t-shirt, along with the likes of "Get over yourselves." Yes, indeed. Anyway, cultural vandalism, says Mandy McCurl. Yes. And even though we have done quite a lot to protect our archaeology and history, and of course the country is packed with it, absolutely, we have lost a certain amount through ignorance, basically, you know. Another lovely live stream, says Desiree. Glad you enjoyed it. And don't forget to submit your essay before you leave the classroom. Miss, thank you very much for being fake late. Katie Brogan said that was very fascinating. Brilliant stuff. Glad you enjoyed it, Katie. Yeah, and I agree. It's an area of history that's brilliant. And I'm glad that we've been able to sort of read from a variety of sources. Matthew Stout, of course, would be the most up to date of what I've read, having only been published in the last 5 years, you know. The run up to Bealtaine, yes, indeed. And of course, we will be celebrating Bealtaine as we always do at Mythical Ireland. Last year, we had a lighting of a little fire here while the fire was lit at Ishnok. This year, we'll actually get to go to Ishnok. And if when I'm at Ishnok, I will do my very best to live stream some of the goings on up there. Back from the Greyhound walk, says Alan. Glad you enjoyed that, Alan. And hope the greyhounds are suitably refreshed from their nice walk around the area. Lexi Erickson, you're very, very welcome. That's very kind of you to say so. And yeah, I've absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it, as always. Imagine this is episode 175. Wow. All of this started just over 2 years ago on the 12th of March, 2020. Anyway. Adina Sparks. Be safe, everyone. Yes, indeed. Tarini Pendleton. GRMA. Just in case you don't know what that means, that's Irish. Gura Mahagut, which means thank you very much. Ooh, writing homework. Thanks, Anthony. Lovely to hear your wonderful Irish lilting tones. Ooh, I look forward to that. Yes, indeed. Perhaps when we have our, some of us, have our face-to-face meeting on the Hill of Tara on the 22nd of May, I will assign work to be done, to be handed in on that date to see if people have been listening. And if they haven't, of course, they have the benefit of going back and listening again, You're playing to the whole house now, Anthony, keeping us all calm. I'll watch again on catch up. Thank you. Yeah, I just had great fun tonight slagging off the latecomers, making them feel really awkward, embarrassing them in front of the others. I've loved this series. So badass, so brutal. So the Battle of Clontarf, that ended Viking rule in Ireland. Yes, pretty effectively. That's exactly what happened. That marked the end of that, almost catastrophic era of slaughter. Carol Barrett is looking forward to the 22nd, and I look forward to meeting you on the 22nd. Anna D says, thank you for the evening. You're very welcome. Always, always a great pleasure for me. And Raymonda Lind is putting the 22nd in the calendar. Looking forward to it. Anyway, folks, go easy. In the meantime, it has gone dark, I can confirm, but it was bright at the beginning of the episode. Of course, the evenings are stretching out lovely now. At the time of the equinox, this is when we see the greatest growth, or for our Australian and New Zealand viewers, you will see the greatest contraction in the rate of change of the day. CLXXV in Roman numerals. There you go. Maybe we could have another live stream with all the pictures of all the beautiful places we've been talking about that you have taken, and some of the graphics of your books, and those who don't own them, for those who don't own them, about that you have taken in. Yes, a great idea. I'll do that, absolutely. You need to write a new book on Vikings. There's a challenge. I can get rail and sail from Gloucestershire. I'll look into it. Well, am I allowed to say? We have a visitor coming from Scotland. Just in case she doesn't want me to say, I won't identify who it is. But yeah, very good. Rowan Grove wishes she could be here in person, but do you know what? It would be the hope to have maybe at least a couple of gatherings a year, So we'll hopefully at some point, have the opportunity to let some of our visitors from foreign shores to enjoy them as well. And we'll do as much sharing as possible. Anyway, in the meantime, I've got to go because I've got to go to the shop. Domestic duties call. Have a very good night or a very good day, a very good morning / afternoon / evening / night, wherever you are in the world. Ikawa, Kulusov, Slongafol, and of course, most importantly, Toga Bugay. Please do take it easy, and we'll see you next time on Live Irish Myths.